at the apparel, right?
Yeah, we're talking about how I saw you wearing your hoodie, or I think it was a hoodie.
Yeah, it was the get
pretty
home
cool.
joint. Yeah.
January.
The basement, man. The basement over on that side is always super chill. So, what happened was wait.
You actually, well, it's
I actually had to talk about. No, it's fine. It's fine. So I walked up to correct you about something else going on in the establishment.
Yeah.
And after that, you came over to inquire about the hoodie and you told me your story.
Yeah.
Right. And that's cool because, like, I think there's this. Well, no, there's not this assumption. Dudes who do security suck. No, just point blank period. It's not because coming with the job, I think what a lot of people forget is you're working that shift of like 9 hours.
Yeah.
So each hour something could have happened, and each hour you're losing patience and you're losing humanity and how you should treat people. Yeah. And I'm really good on like each person's a different situation. You should treat that situation differently from the last. So like I'm good at, if we have an issue with you in the establishment, the next convo, the person who makes a mistake doesn't inherit what happened 5 hours ago just because you're pissed about it. Yeah. Because what that does is that affects the user experience in terms of you guys being in there, having a good time, blowing off steam. And like, you might end up getting into an argument and wondering, where is all this energy coming from? Yeah. And why am I responsible for it? Yeah. So, just, it's very important that like you guys don't have to go through that when you come out to enjoy yourself. Yeah. And what surprises me when stuff like that happens, in terms of folks who come to inquire about Get Home Safe, the work that we do, is when people share their stories with me. You feel what I'm saying? So like when you shared your story with me off the bat, I'm always surprised because like that is a vulnerable story. Sure. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. So do you want to let the folks know about your story?
We can talk the story a little bit. Yeah.
All right, cool. It's all you.
Where do you want to start from?
Top of the key, where it started.
The top. I mean, all right. Well, I guess like many people, my mental health journey started as long as I can remember. Yeah. So I remember having like minor. I guess it's not minor, but SI from an early age in elementary school.
What does SI stand for?
Suicidal ideation. Okay. So I can remember being pretty depressed, not really knowing like how to place my thoughts and navigate different emotions. And then they, come in like go heaps and waves throughout the peaks and valleys throughout the next, like 10 years of my life. And then more so where my like kind of direct story and kind of mental health odyssey begins is at the end of my sophomore year, or sort of in the spring of my sophomore year of college in 2020. So right before the pandemic started, I definitely didn't have the best mental health regulation as far as like my behavioral cycle went early in college and to high school.
When it comes to your behavioral cycle, is that something that you're aware of, or something that like they've given you bits and pieces but you have to figure it out as you go?
I think a little bit of both. People give bits and pieces, you pick them up. And then for me, especially with dealing with mental illness, it wasn't until like I was really trying my best on the behavioral cycle, and either I couldn't implement things or I was implementing things. And
Could you give us an example?
Sure. So I remember like beginning of my sophomore year, so a few months before everything got bad, I started working out all the time and was working out almost every day. There's a physical transformation, started feeling a little bit better, but there was something as far as like the anxiety was going, and as far as sort of like how I was expressing myself, and there was still codependency in my life. There was still depression in my life. Yeah. There was still anxiety. Like a lot of these major feelings that I even still struggle with today in a better place, they were still there with the working out, with eating a little bit more mindfully and hydrating more, with being a little bit more vulnerable about it. I started talking about it more with people. So I was taking those bits and pieces from people, and it still wasn't there. And so where my story begins at the in probably like February of 2020, really started with like I was going out, doing stuff like Players Club, and every time I would go out, I would get super depressed at the end of the night, and it was like a horrifying theme, and it was like I could kind of make it through my days, but even during the weeknights, like it felt like I just wasn't where I normally was socially. And as a fairly extroverted person, I think, like, you know, I like getting energy from other people, but there was definitely a sense of like, I'm always being social to seek validation. And it's not that that's a fake relationship or that I don't like the people I'm hanging out with, but it's just like, sometimes I'm just overdoing it because I don't have enough validation for myself, and I can't set aside time to read or to even watch TV by myself or just do basic things on my own. And so I went to my mom at that point where I was having those depressive episodes or sort of depressive outbursts, and I was like, you know, Mom, like, I think I need a therapist. Like, this is getting really bad. Like, I'm really flattening out. I don't feel like myself. I'm implementing all these things that should make my life go in a better direction, and I'm still having like serious problems on this like mental health front.
When you approached your mom, would you say she did a good job of trying to be there for you and get resources, or was there pushback?
So unfortunately, there was like pushback, and I didn't get a therapist then.
Yeah.
And she was supportive, and she wanted me to try and find a way to navigate what was going on, but also because of the stigma around mental health, I think it works twofold, where like on one front, people aren't as understanding of what's going on, but also people are like less reluctant to support you through treatment, or you're even less reluctant to honestly explain like what's going on because of the fear of how it's going to be perceived. And so I went to her, and I couldn't be as honest about like how bad things were. I was like, you know, I really am struggling with my emotions. I'm anxious. Like, you know, I've talked to a lot of people, recently been more vulnerable. They're saying a therapist might help. And she's just like, well, you know, from her experience, she had some negative relationships in the mental health space, some negative experiences with treatment, therapy. Also just generally, like when I was a kid, as I said, you know, this started a long time ago. There was always attention from teachers on my mental health, or at least on how I was behaving in the classroom, and how that might be reflective of some other things going on internally. Like, I remember the first time I was ever suspended was in kindergarten. Like, you know, it wasn't for like fighting someone or doing anything like really harmful to like classmates, but it was always like really kind of saying inappropriate things to teachers, or being very provocative verbally, just generally like kind of not being with the goals of like the academic day, and kind of, you know, attention seeking, but with also without ever having any ADHD diagnosis. So it's this weird pattern of just like attention seeking behaviors, very provocative, manipulative behavior, frustrations, and no one really ever was like sure how to deal with it. So then yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. Would you say in your parents, I'm assuming both are there?
Both are there.
Yeah, mom and dad.
Yeah.
Would you say in your parents trying to protect you, that trying to give you the normal life that every kid deserves may have gotten in the way of the help or the diagnosis you could have sought that would have helped you down the road? Because it's not a blame game. You feel what I'm saying? We know, we understand that like parents are here to protect us, but sometimes that protection may get in the way, or the way things are treated back in the day, because where mental health is and how it's treated now is not the same as how it was treated 15 and 10 years ago.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, I definitely think there was that level of like trying to give me a normal childhood. And I think also to a certain degree, like with their pushbacks, sometimes the pushbacks were things that I really appreciated. For example, like they didn't want me to get on an Adderall prescription at, you know, too early of an age, or they wanted to make sure that I could learn to like navigate my emotions or identity without other people kind of trying to push me one way or the other. And I did have a therapist when I was 10, and I first started having like, you know, suicidal ideation and these frustrations, and it didn't go very well.
Yeah.
And to my parents' credit, like, it wasn't that they, you know, gaslit that situation and then it didn't go well, but there were, the fit for therapy matters a ton.
Yeah.
And I think my mom is the kind of person that just sort of rules with an iron fist, and she wasn't going to pursue anything without there being like the right guardrails around it.
Especially as a parent.
Especially as a parent. Yeah. So it was a complicated situation, and I wish that there was something that could have been done about it at an earlier age, but to a certain degree, even now I look back on it and I'm like, you know, maybe finding a therapist that was the right fit, maybe, you know, finding the right medications, but even then, like, the stuff that works for me now probably wouldn't have worked for me as an 8-year-old, or at least it's hard to put an 8-year-old kid on like intense mood stabilizers. Like, I take, you know, lithium for bipolar disorder. Yeah. And you don't even diagnose bipolar disorder until you're at least 18.
So that's like 8, 10 years.
10 years.
Before you get to the starting line of, actually, this is what I need also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also begs the question, like, you know, had things been done differently, or had I been in a different environment, would I have manifested the same diagnosis? Because there's that nature versus nurture.
Yeah, but it's also dangerous to look back in the past when it's like, look, we're here already.
We're here already.
And what we're working with is what's in front of us, and that's the best we can do right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you know, we made it to that point in February of 2020, and it was still a tough discussion with my mom. I think it was tough to navigate the mental health space. Yeah. And so, there's always a positive to everything. And like, I think from having that pushback, I think it showed me a little bit more of that sort of twofold side to stigma, where it's like, not only are people on the other side looking at mental health issues the wrong way, and I think especially with something like suicidal ideation, there's this sort of spectrum of like dramatization versus serious problem, and people who are kind of like really there are a lot of people out there who are dealing with it who never say anything. And that's because until it gets really serious, a lot of people in this world just look at it and say like, oh, they're just being dramatic, or oh, they need help, or
ignoring it has become normalized.
And there were a lot of points in my life where I was highly functional and actually still experiencing joy for like half of my days, or more than half of my days, but there were still these moments that would come in where I would have thoughts about suicide or entertaining it or something terrible. So it's like, that's one thing it's made me think about, is like, how do we get help for people who need it, where they can communicate, you know, today I had a suicidal thought.
When it comes to folks who, you were about to say something else?
You're on a roll, so, you know, just keep going. We can get back to it.
When it comes to folks who are highly functional that are struggling with suicidal ideations, would you say approaching them becomes more of a, I need to convince my friend of the reality of what's going on, versus, hey, I know everything has been okay, but are you okay? Yeah. Because when you're highly functional, technically you prove to yourself that you don't need help, because it's like, I'm getting it done. Yeah. Right? But then you have these periods of, do I not need help? Yeah. As in, like, that's important.
Yeah. And that's the hard part too, is it's like learning to understand that like I'm not okay, but that I'm not okay doesn't mean like there aren't, that I still am, I can still go through my life and be happy. Yeah. And I can still work on the fact that I'm not okay. And that I'm not okay isn't a holistic like look at myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because I'm saying I am not okay doesn't mean that is like the judgment of truth on who I am. Like, I am not okay, but at the same time, there are other elements of me that are okay. Yeah. And so there's this, are my emotions okay? Is my burnout okay? No. Not at all.
The fact that burnout is normalized in that sentence too. Yeah. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. So you're acknowledging burnout, but it's like, well, I mean, we're used to this, and we're used to this. That's kind of dangerous when you've become used to that. Yeah.
And so the sort of what I was trying to get at was that there needs to, like, I really feel like there needs to be a way for kids or at least like especially kids, but also young adults, to be able to go somewhere, whether it's something like a suicide hotline or it's just like a mental health inquiry, and be able to say, look, like you're saying, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm burning out. I'm having these thoughts about killing myself. Would I do it? Hell no.
Yeah.
You know, and there are people who might not say hell no, but there's also a lot where it's like they're having these thoughts and they can't articulate them because they're afraid that if they go forward, everything that they're doing is going to be, and all their progress in the areas where they are feeling okay, get stripped away from them.
Yeah.
And so there's this, it's not a happy medium because we're talking about suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
But there is sort of a middle ground where it's like, we're gonna get you the help you need. We need to scale things back.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna like set everything back to ground zero. Like, you know, and I think it's important that kids feel, and those young adults feel like they can communicate that they're having these moments, because I think people don't, at least I never wanted to call the hotline unless I was getting to a point where I was seriously contemplating.
Yeah. And then for me, that's another thing that I talk to people quite often about. It's unfortunate that when it's an emergency, that's when people reach out, or that's when people do the hotline. But technically speaking, when it comes to mental health and when it comes to spiraling, there are stops to the spiral. There's like, if we played baseball, you got base 1, 2, 3, and 4. By the time the call's made, folks are already naturally hovering at third base, going to fourth. Yeah. And what that means is there's an urgency in your situation being taken care of, or folks putting a Band-Aid on it, needing a solution. Instead of, if we start at base 1 or 2, there's consideration in how you're being handled, how you're being listened to, the right language that is necessary for if an emergency happens, or you getting to advocate for yourself, or someone in that situation getting to advocate for themselves in terms of, how would you like to be talked to in an emergency? How would you like to be treated? Because it's not just humanity. Sometimes there are trigger words where it's like, could you please not say that in the middle of my emergency? And like, before the emergency, unfortunately, is the best time to have the conversation, because in the emergency, 50% of words that you're saying, people aren't sure if you're just saying that because you're having a moment with suicide, or if you're saying that because you're trying to manipulate your way out of it. And it's like, well, help is still supposed to be help. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? And I mean, a lot of work that we do now, I put the onus, there's still responsibility for the person going through it. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. Because technically it stops and can be handled by that person, and everybody else is just help. But the environment is the people. The environment's not just like the lawn chair, the front porch, the fence. No, the environment are your mom, dad, associates, friends, how they treat you, how they look at you, the things that they're no longer saying, and you watching that environment change. Yeah, I agree. Like, and I love the analogy of the bases, and I love the reality of the subject. Yeah. But, you know, people often, especially in the world of like privilege, will talk about like, well, this person was born on third, and they, you know, act like they hit a home run, or they're born on third, and they, you know, with money or other things. But it's also like true to a certain extent with mental health, where like, especially with how these things are factored into genetics and environments, like a lot of people are born on like third base when it comes to their mental health and like where they're positioned for the future. Yeah. And we need to like try and figure that out in early childhood education, like getting people access to therapy early, because a lot of people are born into situations where it's really like unfortunately grim, just based off of certain things that they're predisposed to. Yeah. And so I guess that's not the brightest reality, but it's still a reality. It's still a reality. It comes with life. Yeah. It comes with life. Like everyone is born in a different position, and like with our, you know, behavior, we think a lot about how it's like it comes to chance or sort of who you meet and stuff. But a lot of it is really like, wow, like there are a lot of kids out there that need help in early childhood in order to combat the certain things which are positioning them for something like a bipolar disorder or, you know, some other mental illness, mood, psychotic, personality,
whatever nature it is.
Yeah.
And so with the bases, I agree, where it's like on one hand it works with the thought, and there's sort of stages to how you get from, you know, the batter's box of maybe feeling kind of good to all the way back around the bases where something like a hotline comes in question.
Yeah.
These, you know, things become cyclical, and I mean, damn, sometimes it's hard to talk about this stuff.
No, I got you.
Take
your time.
It is a very like concerning situation for me, especially where like I look at how blessed I was as a kid, and like, you know, the fact that I'm here now and was able to graduate from college by now, given what happened, like that wouldn't be possible without a lot of very like important institutional and treatment practices put in place, which allowed me to kind of prevail over some demons, or like work through some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other kids out there who I'm sure like they would be in the same position, but the system is gamed against them. And so whereas like I'm born on like, you know, on home or first, as far as like how far away I am from, you know, what they call the hotline, there's a lot of people who are born, you know, we talked about how important it is, like my parents were together and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of kids who come from different backgrounds, and it's just going to be it's a much different, you know, everyone's challenges. I don't want to weigh them greater or smaller, but it's a different challenge, and based off what we know from like, you know, sociological factors, is going to put you a lot closer to the hotline. And so I just really hope that, you know, we get to a place where we have much better mental health support for kids, where, you know, we're not looking back and guessing like, oh, would something have helped me when I was younger? And, you know, where we know that there are certain things that we can do to help kids the minute they get suspended in kindergarten, the minute they start having suicidal ideation in 4th grade. Like there is a right, or not necessarily right, but there is an optimal or suggested path for them, and we can put them on it.
And there's a window that's open.
Yeah.
I think right now what we're seeing is most schools are working towards mental health now, but they're still afraid to talk about the subject of suicidal ideations. They would like to talk about depression, but there's not enough education, and they're not doing enough research. And then as a teacher, it's kind of unfair because there's only so many hours you have in the day after being underpaid at a job. And then you now have to be responsible for this heavy subject where you as a teacher may not be comfortable with speaking on that, especially if you feel you have a lack of knowledge or experience, especially when it comes to children.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I remember, like, especially with the depression in kids and kind of the attitude towards it. Also for kids too, understanding that kind of psycho ed, as we see, like, you know, a lot of kids nowadays hear terms like depression or ADHD or autism or, you know, something in their classroom. Yeah. And it's such a hidden topic. There is no discussion of it.
Watered down.
It's all watered down. And like there are pros and cons to it. They understand the pros, and so they just think it's all a con. There's just, it's all watered down. And I remember, you know, going back to my journey when I was in like 8th grade, there was like a really brave young girl who was in my class at another school, and she posted her story, or at least some aspects of her story, on YouTube. And she started talking to people about the fact that she was depressed. She was going to take time away from school. And my initial thought, you know, not having heard much about it, was, well, for one, you know, this is super brave. And I don't know how she's, you know, able to like come out with all this stuff. But also, like, she basically just saying that, like, she's just very upset about a lot of stuff in her life, and she's sad all the time. And like, when you're depressed, it's a different state of mind. It's even though it's not considered a psychotic disorder, it's almost like a different reality of mood. Like someone who's depressed, like their sky is green, and someone who's not, their sky is blue. And then but there's a whole spectrum to it, because the mind isn't just like depressed or not depressed or manic depressed and depressed. It's colors of the sky. And like, people are just like, oh, they're just mad, you know?
And it's like, oh, how could you not think the sky is beautiful from the person who sees it as blue, but for the person who sees it as green, you're like, why would you ever think that's beautiful? Like, do you not see that tint of green that is spoiling the mood to everything that's going on?
Yeah.
And, you know, there's privilege in not experiencing that in terms of depression. And like, I think a lot of folks think when it comes to dealing with folks with depression, if this brings me joy, it should bring you joy too. But it's like, the person with depression, they're the person who always has indigestion no matter what meal they have.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, this flavor was good. Going in, it might start off good, like how you were talking about chasing the highs when it came to having good times with friends and how that started to get in the way.
Yeah.
And it becomes more about chasing that fix, and then you realize that fix isn't a good fix.
Yeah.
It's not going to change your feelings towards things, and you're on a roller coaster that's going up. And for most people, that's exciting. But for you, the fear is, all right, when this roller coaster stops and I have to get off, what's next?
Yeah.
And that's usually the peak of where fear hits, because once you're standing in the middle of what next is and it's not what you need, where do you get that from?
Yeah. And where do you get it from? And also, like, once you get to that next step, like, how do you help someone realize, like, as much as their opportunity has been like a curse, like, there's a lot that they can be kind of, you know, utilized for good. And I'm a big believer, as much as I think like mental health and mental illness is a plague, and it should be uprooted. You know, you can never get rid of it, but we should really put what we can into making people feel like they can perform and they can experience the most healthy and happy version of their lives. At the same time, there's a lot of evidence throughout history that shows people with depression, people with these mental health disorders can perform at an extremely high level, and part of that is because of what they're experiencing. It's not just like this person happens to be depressed. You know, Abraham Lincoln happened to be depressed. Martin Luther King happened to be depressed. Vincent Van Gogh was bipolar.
Yeah.
But the fact is something about the way you think, where you're able to understand the mind, like we're saying, because even, you know, we're talking about the colors of the sky and the mind, even when it's not just depressed versus, I guess, neutral, or like not depressed or happier, like within that happier state, you're still going to have colors of the mind. It's still like, you know, we're all playing for like the, you know, world, earth, human race, if you want to go on like a super macro level, even when we see things that aren't suggestive of that. But everyone their mind is going to like experience things in different colors. And people who've been depressed, or people who've faced adversity, they've seen things psychotically, like they see those colors of the mind, they see different ways of shaping things. They're able to understand people's pain and want to like protect them because they don't want anyone else to feel the way they did. So there is an empowerment that comes with mental illness. There truly is. And so that's one thing, especially where I hope for youth in like the coming decades, we're able to show them, like, you know, everyone has pros and cons to their state of mind. Whether you have this condition or that condition, or whether you don't have one, all of you have strengths and weaknesses. And just because it's deemed an illness, you know, unlike you know, when you break your leg or you break your arm, you have to sit out, you have to rehab it. Like, it's not ideal. You'd probably rather go your whole life without breaking a bone if you could. Hopefully, you know, hopefully there might be a random case study where breaking your arm is good.
The thing, it's like, hey, man, you want to get taller, gotta break it.
Break it. You know, there could be some situations, but with mental illness, it's similar. It's like, I mean, you probably want to go your whole life without trauma to a certain degree if you can avoid it.
Hopefully.
But there are going to be ways that we can look at that and find ways to make you like a stronger, like happier, or more like connected person. And so, and there's evidence to show that for people, mental illness, while it's a curse, is also part of what makes them, you know, their excellent version of themselves.
When it comes to suicidal ideation versus depression, what would is there a distinct difference between, all right, this is depression and this is suicidal ideation, or do they sometimes mix into the same container?
So it's probably retrospective for me, because I would have told you in the fall when I was super depressed, like, you know, lowest of low depressed, that like, I know I'm depressed because I'm having bad SI, like all day, every day, like it's just plaguing my mind. And then now in retrospect, when I look back on my mental health journey, there are points where I realize, in part also because of stigma and lack of psycho ed, or lack of like, or even just being competitive, or however it is that I'm wired, I was depressed, but I would not have felt comfortable coming out and saying that because of like my understanding of like of the condition, and my pride, or any other number of different things which could get in the way from me like associating that worry with what I was feeling. So, you know, 7 months ago, maybe more, 9 months ago, I would have told you like, I'm depressed when I need the hotline, or when I'm close to that, or when I'm sleeping all the time, when I'm not, you know, motivated to do things, when I have lack of regard for my diet, or, you know, there are a lot of factors at play. And I was still saying those factors, and those things were present at times when I didn't need the hotline, but I would have just been like, oh, you know, I'm just like coping. And now I look back and I'm like, oh crap, you know, a year ago in June of 2022, I could barely watch movies or TV or do anything. I know earlier I was talking about the by myself versus other people, but in general, you know, I couldn't do anything and enjoy it. I was always just like ready for something to change. And when you're always ready for something to change, for me, when I'm always ready for something to change, that's a sign that I'm a little bit depressed.
Okay.
Because if that's my state of mind, is like, there's nothing I can do, you know, I'm stuck, I'm powerless. Like, my only way out is for the world around me to shapeshift, then I'm probably a little bit depressed. For me, I don't know about how it works for other people.
Yeah, but it's your experience.
But at least in my experience, that's something I've realized is like, if I'm doing well, I feel like I have agency. I feel empowered. I understand how to care for some of the sort of guardrails that I put around my mental health, with like working out, eating, therapy,
and how important those things have been for you.
Oh yeah, the importance of them, and also like, there is like this sense in me now, if I miss my meds, which like rarely happens, but if I miss my meds or I miss a workout, that day or the next day, I'll be a little bit like, like, and not in a sense of like panic or like super frustration, but it's just a sense of like, I know what it feels like to not have these guardrails. Like, I gotta get back on it, because like I just don't want to live back on that purple sky, you know? Yeah.
So you've had hues of skies.
Hues, absolute hues. Like, my depression is like multi-phased, and in a second we can go back to the journey, but
we'll get there when we get there.
We'll get there when we get there. But at least, you know, in my journey throughout college, you know, I was definitely there were a lot of like, the weather of my mind was always shifting, and it was rarely like a cloudless sky. Maybe there were some moments, maybe, and those moments could have been like drug induced, or they could have just been like based, you know, the way my brain was working was almost like a calculator. So if the right conditions aligned, then I was gonna feel okay. So rather than just sort of letting things ebb and flow, kind of like a song or a symphony, it was way more like mathematical as far as like if I wake up today and like I go to the gym and I eat this and I see these people and this music is playing and the weather, you know, if all these factors align, then like I might feel okay. And so there were some moments where I'd have days that computed to be good.
That's a lot of weight.
But it's a lot of weight. And if one thing falls out of line, you're going to be like, shoot, like, you know, we almost had one. It's too like too fabricated, too mechanical.
Too good to be true.
It's too good to be true, especially because if your mind is the weather and the outside is all the weather, then you have these two competing like forces of nature, and like you're gonna lose to the one that's comprised of 7-8 billion other people, and and the actual weather, and like, you know, so to try and like work off of that, it wasn't good. But there were those stages, aside from just being kind of like a calculator mentally, where like there were a few months where like things were probably depressed and I didn't realize it, but it was okay because I had this job, or I had this this social thing going for me. So, you know, it was always like, I'm depressed, but I have this, or I'm depressed, but things will get better when COVID's over. I'm depressed.
So being depressed while having something to accomplish kind of keeps you level until you figure out otherwise.
Yeah. And also there is, it's not dumb to think this way, but it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a sense that we get as humans where it's like, you know, when the Washington football team wins the Super Bowl, like, I'll die in peace.
Elated.
I'll be elated. You know, nothing can stop me.
Yeah.
And like, while, you know, maybe for like a few days or for that year, like I'll feel pretty good, or I'll have that to lean back on. You know, when the Nats won the World Series, it was like the greatest thing ever.
So many people lost their minds.
Some people lost their minds.
Yeah.
And the most depressed people of all depressed people, some of them were out there partying and they didn't feel depressed those nights. And so there is sort of a cure to that communal joy and those moments, but it doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just with sports things. Like, I was having that mentality where I'm like, I'm super worried about getting a job right now for post-grad or for the summer. That's why I'm depressed. This stress is killing me. It's making it worse. And so I think to myself, oh, well, if I get this job, if I, you know, take this trip, if the, you know, Commanders, like, you know, get a quarterback, or the, you know, Nats like play to their potential this year with Schwarber and Soto and all these guys. All right, like, it's gonna be a good year. It's gonna be a good summer. There's nothing that's gonna stop me. And I started to get there a little bit at one point with that thinking, but I was manic. So then once I had to come to terms with the mania, I broke down. And we'll fast forward there later, but there's certainly this level in my mind of always just like forecasting where I'm like, this is what's bringing me down. You know, right now I'm struggling with these exams. I'm struggling with my relationship with someone in my family.
That thinking started to bleed into a lot of different aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And you started moving your own goalposts.
Yes. Yeah. And I never really realized, like, also the degree to which I was traumatized because of that. And like also how much of my style of thinking was a reaction to trauma. And so once I finally got a therapist, took a while before we opened up those doors. Yeah. So we wanted to, you know, really get to know each other first.
I could imagine working through all that Gorilla Glue.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. And I'm still bad at it. He'll be like, this is a trauma reaction. And I'll be like, no, it's not. You know? And I'll be like, you're out of your mind. Like, this is people being awful. Like, this isn't trauma. This is the evil of the world.
But
like,
you've grown with that. And technically, the trauma response is what protected you.
Yeah. And it really, again, trauma can certainly help with certain things if it goes treated, especially. Yeah. If it's sort of left open and you just are bleeding out all the time, like, it's it's hard. Like, there are just going to be some self-defeating moments. And, you know, I've always, you know, had this theory, and I don't mean to get like radical on your, you know, show or anything.
Just being honest.
But I'm just being honest. Like, I've always had this theory that to a certain extent, like, there is a vaccinal nature to trauma. Like, there it is sort of like a vaccine where it's like, if you experience the wrong thing, you make the wrong mistake, and it lives as trauma, or it's like imprinted in you, you know, I can't do this again, or people who treat me this way are terrible, like I can't let anyone else feel this way, then you're, for the most part, going to, or not for the most part, it is ingrained in your nature to be against that. Now, there's certainly all sorts of complexes that come from that, because no trauma is the same. And certainly something I struggle with is, like, you know, people who get abused, then they like, there's the Stockholm syndrome, sympathize with their abuser, and it's rare, but it's, even there are like subsections of Stockholm syndrome too, where like maybe people don't sympathize with their abusers, but they're trying to like get back at them, or like get even. So we don't need to dive too. Trauma's a rough place to talk about, but it's
a large place.
It is a large place, but there is, you know, again, like that is the that is the one like positive thing I always think about in the mental health world, which is the hardest thing to see, especially with how with the lack of like sort of calibrated treatment, and how much farther we are behind with our approach than in physical health. The one thing I always take solace in is that there are positives to the experiences, and it will, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like, that is more so true in the mental health space than any other like health space. When people who like really have sort of run this thing by the neck, they come out and they don't say, and I'm not going to speak for them, but a lot of people in the mental health space who've had negative experiences, despite all the BS that they've been through, they might not change it. They maybe wish that it didn't happen, or wish that it doesn't happen for other people in the future. But for them,
it's a part of who they are.
It's a part of who they are. And that's exactly what you were saying, I think, the beginning of of our conversation. And I don't remember whether we got it on tape or whether it was in prep.
No, we didn't get that on tape.
Unfortunately.
No, it's fine though.
You want to repeat what you were saying though, about kind of seeing people for who they are versus how other people want to?
Well, so the thing is, when it comes to just perspectives, right? And we're probably gonna redo that at the end of our sit down, but when it comes to folks who are trying to help others, especially people that they love, there's this mindset that I just want us to get back to normal. And it's like, fam, I've had the episodes. I let you know what's going on. I probably lost my mind a couple of times. There's no longer normal for us. So what we're trying to work back to is, this is who I am, and I'd like you to move to the beat or to the place that you can accept me for who I am, instead of trying to change me back into who I was.
Right.
And I don't get that back anymore. I don't have access to that anymore because of what I've experienced. I now know the signs when I'm like, hey, I'm kind of off. You should now know the signs of, hey, he's kind of off. And if you're choosing not to see that, if you're choosing not to be a part of my reality, I may either need to change my environment to have people around me who respect that and understand I don't have a choice in this matter when it happens. And I think that's something that's unfortunate, that people think mental health is a choice, and it's not.
No.
Mental health is, I'm adapting to what I'm going through, and this is what's happening to me. And now that this is happening to me, how do we manage this as a team and a community together? When I look at the landscape of mental health, unfortunately, especially on social media, I think we get into, I call it toilet bowl culture. That's when we start to repeat the same thing and we all have the same approach.
Yeah.
And like, all right, as much as we're educating the people around us, there still has to either be steps, and not everything needs to be a solution, but certain things do need to have a purpose outside of just, I educated everyone. Okay, cool. Now that you've educated them, are you teaching them what the next steps would be, or are you showing them the person that they should now transfer to learn more about what the next steps would be towards either a solution or a better understanding of what's going on?
Yeah.
Or are you practicing sounding smart without actually taking care of your community?
Yeah.
So you're taking care of yourself.
We could talk about that for a while. I probably showed you a little bit of my mental illness in the process. So, well, talking about people trying to be smart.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, of course everyone wants to feel smart. That's not one question, but it's like, when you feeling smart or proving that you're smart comes at the sacrifice of the room or the people who are looking to you for knowledge or looking to you for advice, or they're looking to you for understanding on what it is, and you pick just sounding smart and that's it. You technically do your relationships a disservice.
Well, also, I think honestly, especially when you think about the word smart and like being a smart ass and kind of the connotation with like, all right, smart guy. I think there's sort of a difference between being smart and being intelligent on a subject. And I think like being smart is kind of like a thirst for like power or influence, or like using your knowledge for that you know, influence and gain. And then intelligence is more like having a thirst for knowledge and a thirst for sort of the
read books, just sit down with souls and their experiences, start to put together the pieces of the puzzle. I think I've done a lot of that, even with I have like some shorts that I'm working on, and I realize with each interview that I do, I'm now allowed to do shorts, and I get to send it in to the therapists or the people that are going through it or the folks in the wellness community, and they get to edit it and send it back to me, and then I do the video, and that video now has like justified knowledge, it has advocacy, it has the person that literally deals with it and what's the goal that they're looking to accomplish, and it's a representation of that person's work. And now people have a better understanding from the view of someone who isn't professionally inclined to that space, but they've had the conversations and they've asked the right questions, and then they have more of an understanding than the person who's watching the video. So I'm going to do the whole reintroduction and whatnot. It's just going to be like, pew, pew, pew. And then we'll get back to the other side of the interview. I'm going to do the 3, 2, 1 again. Just, you know, prepare you for it.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's up, homies? It's your boy Juice Jones from Get Home Safe, here with another Mental Health Monday sit down. My boy Peter, what's up, man?
How we doing?
I'm good. Good to see you, man. Welcome back. Tell the folks about who you are, man.
Tell them who I am. Well, honestly, as far as mental health goes, actually, shit, can we redo that?
I mean, no, it's fine. I'm good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, we'll keep it real. I am a 23-year-old young man from Washington, D.C., college student out in St. Louis at Washington University, where I just walked for graduation a month ago.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. Proud of you. Yeah.
It definitely feels good to get there, as I was saying earlier. It kind of lines up with my mental health journey, too, so being able to walk that finish line, although there's no finish line with mental health, but you know, certainly getting to a more stable place with the guardrails like meds and exercise and feeling good, you know, sort of reaching a better place at the same time I'm reaching that finish line is great. And
finished in 5 years.
Took 5 years,
It took 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Same, 5 years over here too.
So,
you know. Yeah.
Getting it done. More independence, right?
Getting it done.
That's
all it is.
Big level.
And I mean, in your experience, you bounce back.
Had to,
Yeah. So, all right. Gonna stop that right there.
I didn't love my intro, honestly, but we can keep it if you.
No, that's fine. That's fine, fam. We're not here to be perfect. That's the worst thing you could do. You feel what I'm saying?
No, you don't want to be. I just want it to look good for you, so that it's not.
You look good at who you are.
Yeah.
Like, that's my rule. Like when I make mistakes, also I don't edit out any of my mistakes.
Yeah.
So like folks have seen me say the wrong terms, the wrong information, anything else like that. Nah, because at the end of the day, like, people relate with folks who make mistakes.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
imagine if every single episode I put out was like edited, crisp, clean, not one mistake, not one wrong word.
Yeah.
I fumble over my words. I actually have when I was a little kid, I had a speech impediment. Like,
Really?
in Jamaica, they call it twist tongue or some shit like that. So there were certain words that I couldn't pronounce.
You're Jamaican?
Yeah, both sides, mom and dad, Jamaican, just point blank period. I was born in Jersey, but raised by two Jamaican parents. So my mom's from Kingston and my mom's from Manchester and my dad's from Kingston.
Wow.
Yeah, so just straight through.
Yeah.
And I was raised in a hospital, so I have like a thorough health education. Like, I was a patient advocate in high school. Like, anything that the work that I do with mental health is just an extension of the work I did as an advocate when I was in high school before going to college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. You're a pro's pro.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. It takes practice and passion.
You gonna get back in the hospital ever?
There's too much yellow tape. The work that I do now, I don't want to allow bigger corporations and establishments to dictate the way in which I distribute and manage my work and the positions that I want to be in. Like, unfortunately, when you work for these establishments and these institutions, they view we're cutting you a check as we own the rights to how you decide to do your community outreach. Or the language that they usually use is, we don't feel what you're doing is a good representation of us. But like, my resume is good enough for you guys to hire me. You hired me for my resume, so it doesn't make sense for you guys to hire me for my advocacy, my work, and my community outreach, and then to change what I am because I don't fit your mold, but you guys wanted me in that mold.
Yeah.
Nah. And I've had a lot of hospitals in Jersey, in New York, and in DC that want me to work for them. And when I ask them specific questions, hey, can I continue to make the content? Can I continue to do these sit downs? Can I continue to build this platform on mental health and these discussions and these observations on what I've seen? It's a hard no. And I'm like, all right, so what do we do? Just thank you for your time, and that's it. You feel what I'm saying? Like, you don't always have to be right. Is subjective sometimes. That's the best way to put it. There's what people have grown accustomed to, but what you've grown accustomed to usually isn't what change looks like.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So, but where were we in the last conversation? We were talking about the sky, purple.
Purple, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we live right now?
Yeah, no, we've been live the whole time.
Oh, that's
So like the little in-between combos.
Oh yeah.
I'll just cut that up, make sure it fits in there. What I do like to do, which is actually a funny thing that I've been exploring, is I like having tidbits of a conversation that goes into the opening of a show.
Yeah.
Where you're just sitting down, you're rapping, and then everything gets started. And you're like, oh, no, that's dope.
So see, that's also what's cool is like we did the reintro, and then I thought we were taking like a quick break and then getting back to it. Who knew that it was a break? Who knew? We're live. It doesn't matter whether we're live or we're off air. Like
that's what conversations are, though.
That's what conversations.
That's what conversations are. Like,
yeah.
The cameras just happen to be there. Life without the cameras is when things are really happening. So once you grow used to it, it's really not hard.
Yeah.
It takes the right people, though. A lot of people want to approach the topic, but not a lot of people have the consideration that you need to make the right amount of space for certain parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start back on the sky being purple and what that means.
All right. Purple.
And then after the purple sky, I think it would be dope if you describe, now that you've made the strong line for what the feeling of depression is, let's define what the feeling of a suicidal ideation is.
Sure. If you want to talk about the other end of the spectrum, we can talk mania at some point too.
Yeah, if you're whatever you're down with, I'm down.
Yeah, I knew that, but purple skies. You want to talk about what it feels like right now? Is that more, or you wanted more so like?
I think a description on what it feels like would actually be important. Right. And then what does that color represent for you?
So
when that's like been the thing,
like purple skies for me, it's I mean, it's a darker color. It's more intense. It is kind of that ominous, feels sort of like, thunderstorm, either on the horizon or coming. But part of what I feel when there's a purple sky, and then I'll be able to explain why I think that color, is I can't see anything.
Okay.
I look at my life, and because I've been doing this calculator approach, like I'm like, what is in store in the future for me, and not from a sense of like, oh, like how much, or what can I attain professionally, or like, but it's just like or what can I attain socially. It's like I don't understand like where I'm headed with my emotions. I feel this way right now, and I don't see any way for it to get better. Like there's just no way.
Yeah.
And so because there's no way to go to suicidal ideation, I'm feeling these suicidal thoughts right now. Like I look at my life, and I look on the past, and there's dread, and there's trauma reactions, and there's a lot of different mixture of memories and unfortunate emotions. And also I think a big reason why I feel depressed too is like because of these types of prognostications that I make, like this is gonna happen so I'll feel good, this is happening so I feel bad. And also then there's kind of the contrast element, and when you go manic, you feel unjustifiedly so, but you're feeling like you're on top of the world. I mean, it literally feels like you are. It's kind of like a combination of being like the Hulk and like something else, but there's this Hulk-like element to it where you go into manic mode and you just cause havoc internally, and you're running around and you're doing all this stuff for like however long your episode lasts, and then you snap out of it, and it's like Bruce Banner, like I can remember all of that, but like I just let the other guy in, there is this other like sort of force within my brain that just takes over, and like it's gotten to a point now where like I can kind of control the mania, and I sort of can direct its energy. But at first it was just like, but because you feel so high and mighty, when I first went manic, I was like working out twice a day, and like waking up at 7 a.m.
Twice a day.
Would wake up at 7 a.m. I would go into the backyard. I would do like a grit workout. I'd do like 100 dips, like 200 push-ups, run a mile, like just find whatever I could do to, planks, and like I would just do a body weight workout in the morning early on, like a couple hours of sleep, and then I would work all day long, smoking weed all day long, and then after I was done with my work, I would go and I'd do another workout, and then that would be like the conclusion of my work, and then I would just kind of like be like goofing off during the evening. But like a lot of the days I would wake up, do that little workout in the morning, and then do that, and you just feel like, it's like you're on a drug. I mean, that's what the chemical reaction of mania is like. It's like being on like, I don't know what it feels like to be on other drugs. It's like being on drugs.
Yeah.
And so when you come down off of that, and also you have whatever drugs they gave me, the antipsychotics and stuff, were really slowing me down and making me depressed. The purple skies are just kind of like, where do I go? I feel tired. I feel angry. I feel like I have nowhere to go. And maybe sometimes it's purple, sometimes it's just black. Like someone is like sometimes there's no sky. I mean, truthfully, like when I'm on my deathbed, like there's no sky. Like I can't see anything. Like, the lights are pretty damn near off. And like purple approaches that, and there is just this intense like thunder and lightning going on, and kind of reckoning, and my inside saying like there's nowhere for me to turn. Like even therapy, even meds, even like whatever I'm doing, like there's nothing you can do. And I guess luckily, because even though I was thinking those things or saying those things, I was able to stick with like my therapist and stick with my psychiatrist and take some suggestions from other people about how to feel good, be a little bit more grateful.
Would you say readjusting perspectives has helped you out?
Readjusting perspectives has definitely helped me out. I think it's also been important for me, at least this past like 6 or 7 months, to just
take your time.
Not be like determinate.
Okay.
You know, I never like internally, like never tell myself I've reached the recovery point, you know? And I think that was where I'd made my error previously, especially when I was feeling good, was I'd feel a lot better. And then I would say, this is, you know, I did it. I beat it. You know, I beat depression and anxiety, or I beat this condition. Like no one can stop me now. And,
that sounds like a doorway for Mania to make another appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And so the biggest thing about this time was I just sort of played off of like what I knew from like the previous few episodes, and was just like, these things must be true. Like I have to be accepting of the diagnosis, and I know that the lithium will prevent the mania. But I need to just like trust that I must keep working on the mental health side of things. And even when there's other things that I'm not happy with, like learning how to like, I needed to learn how to not be happy and also be like healthy, you know? The goal is to be like happy and healthy, and they're kind of two different things.
You know what? So learning to not be happy is similar to the guy who's in a relationship who thinks that there's a problem when his girlfriend is silent.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really just okay for both of you guys to share the silence. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. And honestly, I'm that guy who, if there's silence, I'm like, so, like, and that guy, like, you know, why the chicken cross the road? Like, yeah, you know, that's me. I'm that guy.
Yeah.
And that's true. Like, and that's kind of how it was I sort of figured, all right, if I'm happy or if I'm healthy, then I'll be happy. Because I always figured I'm happy previously, but I'm not healthy. So if I get healthy, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And I never really realized like they're just going to go at their own pace. And there's a chance that I get to a point in my life where I am healthy, but I'm not happy. And that's never been like, that's rarely been the case for me. And this semester I was happy and I was healthier for most of it. But you know, there have also been some points like over the past 2 or 3 months, and I won't, you know, go too hard into why, but where I've been like healthy but not happy. And like, you know, I talk with my doctors and I'm checking off all the boxes and you know, I'm meeting medication requirements, like lithium level is good. Yeah, my exercise is solid, eating and weight are solid, you know, doing well academically.
Accepting you don't need to work out 2 times a day.
Accepting I don't need to work out 2 times a day. Yeah. That was hard. And also accepting that like we could get into the body positivity and dysmorphia stuff of the previous, but
we could do that another day.
We'll do that another day.
It'll always be an open door for you. You feel what I'm saying? You know I got you.
It.
You know I got you.
Thank you.
You know I got you. Yeah.
Thank you. But for now, you know, while we're talking about the skies, I mean, I would say depression, the big part of it is just like not being able to see like anything like up in the sky. And I think that's also part of it too, is like there's the sky historically is like such a navigator for people, you know. You follow the constellations, you follow the North Star to go
That's
north.
why folks who use the sky were usually referred to as pioneers.
They're pioneers.
Because they're searching.
Because they're searching. Yeah. And that was how they made maps. They would look at where the stars were, and they would mark it, and they would trace. And they actually, like, maps weren't accurate, but they did a pretty damn good job in the early days. And it was because people used the sky very well. They put their gods in the sky. If you don't have the sky, then it's really, really hard to navigate your life. And when I get depressed, the sky for me, and like kind of the laws of nature, like I said, which exist outside of me, are gone. And my laws of nature take over. And that's not like a narcissistic way of looking at it, but it's part, or like, I'm not trying to say, oh, this is all my fault.
That's your reality.
But that is a reality.
Yeah.
And I realize a lot of it comes from me just simply like having these perspective malfunctions. And there's trauma too and other things. But a lot of it has to do with like, my sky vanishes and then I don't know which direction to go. So that's purple. And then now kind of where I'm at
Currently
is like, you know, it's like, it's probably like partly cloudy, you know, getting some sunshine, but there's still some cover, but it's warm out.
It's not a bad start.
And it's good. So like I can go to the pool. I don't need to wear a coat if I don't want to. It's nice weather, you know, like if you look at it with the right not the right perspective. If you look at it with with a certain perspective, like it's a great day every day. Yeah. But there's still things out there that aren't great, and I'm not even sure that I'll ever get to a cloudless sky or even like, you know, a cloudless rain, which is tears of joy. But
you touched on mom.
Yeah.
Her handling of things early on.
Yeah.
And then it spun the block on you.
It was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun, but I didn't really...
While you were isolated.
It was frustrating. But it definitely, like... I still had enough optimism, and then I was like, all right, like, you know, it'll get better. Something will happen. Like, therapy would be helpful. I trust what people have to say.
When your mental health emergency spun the block on you, what do you think you were dealing with at the time? Was it the suicidal ideation, the SI, as you refer to it?
No.
Or was it more depression?
I had some SI back then. I think definitely called a hotline like that semester.
What was your hotline experience like? Are hotlines helpful, or are they a placeholder until you get better? Or receive better help, I think would be the best words.
Oh my God. I kind of black out. It's tough to remember. Sometimes they've been helpful. I mean, there was one time. That will eventually get to this stage in my life, but it's just a little like precursor.
Take your time.
Yeah, but there was a call I once had on a hotline where it was just like it was very, very clear that I needed like serious help, and that I was pretty close to like being on that DB. And so I talked to the hotline at WashU called Provident Counseling for a while. Originally I called another counseling hotline, but they didn't deal with SI. It was mostly a peer counseling network. And so
what's peer counseling?
You need someone to talk to. You're having a tough time, struggling with a relationship, struggling with school. It's basically like trained counselors who are undergraduate students who can talk to you when you need some help, but they can't do SI, and they can't really do like acute situations. But they're very, very good. Like, oh, you know, I'm having trouble with my girlfriend right now. Yeah. It's causing me stress. I need to talk through that. I need to talk through this.
Speaking presentation to folks who do peer counseling over in GW's grad department.
Yeah. And it's a helpful thing, but they had to direct me to Provident, and so I talked to them, and it went so long. You know, I went that night to again, this is a little bit further in the future. This is a year after I had the incidents with my early depression and my mom and first calling hotline. That was February 2020.
Okay.
April of 2021, a lot of stuff happens in between, but the first time I ever got meds, I had a bad day at work, and I was set to go to a baseball game, and we were going with two of my friends from DC because the Nats were playing in St. Louis, and I was like rocked, like I was like so depressed, just like so anxious from what had happened at work, and I couldn't really function like internally, and I kind of played it off for them, like they knew things were like not great, but I don't think they realized how bad. We went to the game. I had to take a few walks by myself around the stadium, and then like the minute we got back from the game, we all went our separate ways. I was just alone in my apartment, and I just kind of like collapsed mentally. Like it had been building up, and I had to call the hotline. I was speaking to them for a long time, and it managed to calm me down after a few hours or maybe an hour. It was a significant amount of time.
How long is the inpatient process?
I didn't go inpatient then, but they set me. They told me, all right, we're gonna set you up with a follow-up call tomorrow, and we'll go from there. I don't remember if it was that night or the next day that they were also like, we're gonna set you up with a psychiatrist. And then I did the follow-up call, and then student health center set me up to have a one-on-one intake with a psychiatrist, and it was all during COVID, so it was all virtual on Zoom. So I did like a Zoom or a health portal meeting with the psychiatrist, and then from that point forward, it was probably mid or late April, probably later April, started taking meds. It was early April. But I started taking these meds, and we'll get to there eventually. But the hotline, I would want to say that was a positive experience because it helped me start to get closer to like the right diagnosis or sort of the right like treatment from like psychiatrists, which I needed. But then I had a terrible experience with the psychiatrist that I got linked with in many different ways. So I had to just kind of accept that one for what it was down the road. It took me a while to like go separate ways.
What was
with this person.
What was the negative experiences? If you don't mind.
It was multifaceted.
Okay.
One, she was like very dismissive, I would say, or at least like kind of she was doing her own thing. Two, she prescribed me the wrong medication.
Crazy.
On like a not just in like a we think Vyvanse over like Adderall or like at like Abilify instead of like Seroquel or something. It was like a major like miscalc, and I think she could have avoided it. And she told me that, okay, if you're bipolar and you take this, you're gonna go, there's a chance you could go manic, and this is what mania is. And she did a terrible job describing what mania was. On top of that, she was like telling me all of these things that I don't think most people who go manic would identify with, like jumping off of buildings and stuff. It was like crazy examples, like thinking that you can fly. Like it was like absolutely like ludicrous examples she was giving me. So then she gave me the medication, and
so she gave you extremes.
And I hadn't been manic to that point. And then I started taking the medication she gave me, which was Zoloft. And I remember within like 2 or 3 days, I started getting like more and more confident, and it started to feel kind of like, oh, my dopamine is high, or like I don't need dopamine from other things because I'm for whatever reason these meds are working, and I'm like like I can feel myself happy. And then like within a month, I was like tripping sack. Like it was
damn.
like it was like it was crazy. But she just gave me such a terrible example of what bipolar was as a warning. And so I think she could have avoided it if she did enough research on me. And there was no large evidence of bipolar in my family, but it was certainly a risk, especially with my sisters. Or I shouldn't expose her, but especially with certain, things that I see in my family. And if she knows there's a risk for bipolar, she should give me a reasonable understanding of what bipolar is and what the risks look like. And she just comes into this meeting and she's like, yeah, you'll think you can fly and you'll want to like jump off buildings and you'll have this like confidence that's like you're able to do this and that. And I'm like, this sounds super extreme and like really stigmatized and just not right.
Yeah.
And it was just not okay. And so we'll rewind back though. That was one of the that was annoying as hell what happened with this particular psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So, I had that, thing sort of spun out with trying to get therapy, and then COVID started a few weeks later. And so I'm like, all right, whatever, this is what it is. Came home, started doing online school, like things were kind of bad for everyone too. So I was just like, I feel fine, especially considering everything that's going on.
You did a comparison of, well, since things are bad, what I'm going through isn't that bad.
Or like, I must be feeling bad because of what's going on. Everyone probably feels this way to an extent. Or yeah, I never really felt like, oh, there's a problem going on because it's COVID. Like, of course I can behave this way now and not feel too bad about it. And then summer happened, and it was a very unhealthy summer for me. It was a really fun summer, but it was
fun. But it was unhealthy. But it was fun.
It was unhealthy.
Yeah.
You can have fun being unhealthy. It's not recommended. It is not recommended. It's a bad decision. Like, but I definitely like ignored all of the safety warnings of mental health.
Fuck it.
Yeah, I was just like, fuck it. Yeah, fuck it. Like, I am going to be an absolute degen this summer. And I went back to St. Louis and lived there, and I just like,
picking up the pieces. Yeah,
it was fun. It was really fun. It was unfortunately fun, but it doesn't go without moments where my mental health was also bad. And there were a lot of things that were going on. In fact, I started to notice other people who had mental health problems at the time.
You started seeing the associations.
And so I started seeing them, and then that either caused me to be like, I don't look like that, so then how could that be me? Or I started to just think like, man, I need help. Like, all these people have parents who get them meds, who get them, therapy, or that help them kind of actualize whatever they're going through. And at the end of the summer, so I was in St. Louis from May through the end of July. Came back here for a little bit, then went to the beach. And when I was at the beach, like, it was really fun, but there were moments that were super low. And I had a few moments where like I just kind of cracked. And so there was one moment I had at the beach I'd prefer not to go into details on, but it kind of scarred me. And for the next like week or 2 weeks after it happened, before I went back to school at the end of August, this was probably in like mid-August or so, I just thought about it every day, and it made me super depressed. And so then when I moved back to St. Louis, and then, I gave it a second shot on the therapy side of things. And I called my grandmother and kind of explained to her what was going on in my family, and was like, can you help me get a therapist or get help for sort of what I'm going through, what others are going through. She did, and it took a couple tries, but we found a really good therapist.
Therapy is a dating game.
It was, and I got lucky, First date went very well, and I've been going on dates since, but found my therapist in St. Louis, and we started doing it all virtual because of COVID. And I think pretty early on, now he'd have to confirm this, but I think he could tell part of what I was struggling with was some trauma some like self kind of confidence issues and understanding of what we now talk about, which is sort of process versus content, and like struggling with like the process that goes on in my like rationalization of my mind, or like the actual content. So I met with him virtually for like let's say like 7 months or so before doing it in person, maybe 8 months. It was like September of 2020 through maybe April of 2021.
And that 7 months was just to figure out if you guys were a right fit.
Yeah, and that was just to figure out, so maybe more like 9 months or 8, but whatever it was, that was just, not just to figure out if we were the right fit, it was to really kind of get to know each other, because there was a limit to what we could do online and talk about, and his treatment approach for trauma is EMDR, and so he was like, we'll start doing trauma work once we meet in person. So
I both met reaction. It's something having to do with how you react to things, right?
EMDR,
Yeah,
electromagnetic, something reactive. I don't. It's a brain. It's a trauma therapy that centers on right brain, left brain stimulation, and the goal is to kind of think about how trauma causes our, like, so the sides of our brain, or sort of the way that our brain interacts with each other, the way that the lobes of our brain interact with each other, to kind of overload and be like either like too rational or too creative in the thinking of it. And so part of what EMDR is it's kind of like a lockbox for memories, and your goal is to like introduce something bad that happened and like take it out of the lockbox, which is sort of where the trauma is, and like expose it to different like sensations while stimulating your left and your right brain. And in the process, you're able to become more comfortable with this like unpleasant things that are associated with certain memories. So it's tough to explain in short. And
I think you just gave great examples.
Thank you. So, but we started doing EMDR around the same time. So I had that unpleasant experience with the psychiatrist and was calling the hotline. And at first, and even now, like EMDR was, so I did all that online with him, and we got there. And there's some other stuff I could talk about in my journey on the way to that point. But I don't think it's as, none of it's too important for now. So this is really where things start to get interesting.
Okay.
So, I started doing the EMDR with him. I started getting the meds, and generally that month, which was like May of 2021, things started going much better for me. And I came home to DC. I was much happier. I had all this more energy, but I was also generally like way more loosey-goosey, kind of spiritual, which is not a bad thing, but it was almost to a fault internally. I started talking about like sexual things, like in kind of my notes way more than I usually did. I started even having kind of these like hypersexual tendencies. And
do you think you became outlandish?
Just
internally outlandish.
A little bit, yeah. Definitely a little out. I don't know. I think I became too outlet, very explorative. I became overstimulated, I would say. And so, but I was doing the EMDR and I was practicing it on my own, like tapping my right leg and my left leg and listening to music and trying to focus on the trauma. And it got to a point where I'm now manic. I'm working on trauma, and I'm back in DC in a more normal environment because things are opening up for the first time since like February of.
So you're having a ton of stimulants.
Ton of stimulants. Yeah. Like, and I'm smoking weed all day, every day, or smoking weed every day. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't, the weed smoking hadn't got out of hand at that point, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Started to get bad when I came back around this point. And I just started having all of these like highly like philosophical, spiritual thoughts. And many of them were actually very enlightening, and I still reflect back on now, and I'm like, you know, that manic experience like really helped me gain a new perspective, which was valuable as much as it was damaging. But to focus more on the negatives, because I don't want to glorify mania in any way.
Yeah.
I started to tell myself by like mid-June of 2021, the thing that I kept telling you about earlier, I beat depression and anxiety. You know, these things like my suicidal ideation was bad. I thought about killing myself every single day for so many days in a row. And I like had these hotline calls. I had all this therapy, and somehow like I've prevailed by some combination of things. And at first it started to be fine. And then we get to the point where I'm like working out twice a day. I moved back to St. Louis in mid-June after a few weeks here. And I moved back to St. Louis in mid-June.
See the trend coming.
And I had no idea how bad it was. But it was like energy was off the walls. Sexual energy was off the wall. And it was like all these different things were like turned up to the max. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, like after a few weeks of just kind of being like manic and like harmless, like I mean, people probably looked at me and were like, Peter's really like had a change in perspective or something. I don't know what they were. Peter's really like pushing it right now, but I think most people weren't like, oh, Peter's like, you know, criminal, or like his energy is like harmful to him or to other people. The only time I really remember anyone being upset with me was like my roommate got mad at me one day because I went to a bar to watch the Euro Cup final instead of watching it with him. I was like, ah, damn.
You're like, oh, that was what you're mad about. Oh man,
Mad about
okay.
what?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All this other stuff, and that's what made the cut.
Yeah.
Got you.
So and I don't even think I was doing enough at the time to like fully like poke the bears of my.
So no one at any point actually came to you and said, hey man, is everything okay?
I don't think they would have known exactly what was going on. I mean, there were some references.
Did you ever share anything with them when you were going through the stuff before?
They knew I was pretty depressed, and they knew I was like suicidal that semester. Like, I don't think
Did they recognize what it looked like, or they just knew what you told them?
I think they recognized that it was happening, but they were kind of in denial about the degree of it. And then when things got better, I think they were starting to be like, oh, like, you know, he's feeling a lot better from his mental health. Going home probably did wonders for him because he missed home. And I come back to St. Louis.
And you're on one.
And I'm on one. And I don't know what they all thought. But again, it was also like fucking, I mean, and my perspective is diluted because I was manic, but it was insane. It was like working out twice a day, running. I didn't usually run a lot.
You had a lot of energy.
I had a lot of energy, being philosophical, reading at random times. Like, I was getting mad at people at these weird moments, but so that people knew something was going on, but I don't think that they knew that it was like, this is like a hospital level situation. So then comes my like birthday, which is July 13th,
Around the corner.
2021. Yeah, less than a month. And
any plans?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, probably just, we'll see. And now my birthday already was kind of a weird day for me. Now it's like a dark day. But
that's why I was like, you gotta set up your celebrations. It's the same for me. You know.
Yeah.
I feel you. Certain dates, like tomorrow, for example, is that day for me.
Yeah.
So like, for my friend, made sure to send her mom flowers.
Yeah.
That's the reason that I do all the work that we do. Sent her sister money. Hey, lunch is all me. Keep it up. Because usually I take the day off, but scheduled to work. And it's like, you know, when it comes to dark days, you have to do what you can to turn them into celebrations, and forms of appreciation. Because like, you got to remind yourself, like, for everything that's going wrong or going to go wrong, there were things that went right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the goal is to have it be a brother, but for now, I'm just laying low and trying not to jinx anything. But
you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
Moving the goalposts if things line up.
Well, I mean, more so from the perspective of just my luck. Like,
Okay.
I haven't even made it like a year yet since I got back from like residential treatment.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what I'm saying. Is like, I don't want to like go. I don't drink. I don't drug anymore. Like, you know, on my birthday, like I'll do something fun.
You have good friends. From what I've seen, you have good friends.
My friends are awesome. So, and I'll be with them. Yeah. But I'm not gonna, you know, go throw anything and travel. I'll get a really nice dinner, get some ice cream. Yeah. Watch a good movie.
That sounds like a great day.
It'll be a great day. Yeah. No doubt it'll be a great day. Yeah. But I'm not gonna do anything like too outlandish.
I got you.
Because of what you're about to hear. So, you know, that birthday started approaching in 2021, and I was manic, and I like started hearing all of these. Well, I'd been having these like spiritual moments for about a month and a half, and like they were really insane. I don't even know how to describe them, and I haven't had anything like that since. But this birthday starts approaching, and like on top of all these like crazy like kind of highs I'm living, I start getting a sense that like there's sort of like things going on that I don't know about. Like it's a very like weird feeling, and it's like, you know, people are saying stuff that had emotion behind it that didn't make sense. And then I don't want to go through all of the different things that I thought I saw at the time, because it was all kind of psychotic. But, you know, I eventually kind of convinced myself that like there was this whole kind of like, I was deep in psychosis. I thought that there was this whole plot around my birthday that centered on me, and that the government was working on it, and that Hollywood was in on it too. And like, I didn't really know how to digest all of the information that was coming at me.
That's a great movie script.
It could be. It could be. There's some moments where I'm like, guys, like I know I'm in psychosis, but like I'm throwing movies at you right now. Like one of my delusions was like, it all sounds super weird, but so that eventually my dad comes out, because I'm like kind of calling home and saying like, I don't know, this is before I thought the Hollywood like kind of government thing. But I thought there was some sort of surprise party or something, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And so I kept calling home and saying like, all this criminal behavior is going on, I'm going psychotic. So then my like dad comes out and sort of sees I'm freaking out but doesn't know what to do, so he leaves. And then within like a day, my anger goes from like a 3 to like a 10. And then it's just like full-blown mania. It was like as if before like I had like fire coming from my hands. Now I'm like the human torch.
Whole body. Yeah.
The whole body. Yeah. Like I'm just like driving around St. Louis like in fucking Fast and Furious. Like
when you think back to what the psychiatrist was saying, do you think you ever got close to any of the descriptions that she gave?
Never.
Where mania would be?
Never.
That's how outlandish her example.
Oh my God, they were nuts. Yeah, it was actually nuts. And there's also some other reasons why it was so hard to figure out what was going on, because there is some like, I think, overusage of the term bipolar. Yeah, both by people who stigmatize it and they're like, this person is bipolar, just to like think they're funny,
just to get it done.
Yeah, but also there is like a bipolar 1 and a bipolar 2, and I think sometimes,
and those things are very important.
Yeah, and they're differentiated for a reason. Yeah, and I'm bipolar 1. Bipolar 2 is a little different and doesn't need to be broken by meds. And there's just some other things to how severe it is, but I don't want to get too much into that. I love my bipolar 2 people. It's just it's a little different, but
you don't want to speak on what you haven't experienced. Yeah.
But this psychiatrist was telling me the first time I met with her about bipolar and what it's like if you go manic or from taking the meds. Oh my God, it was completely foreign. Jumping off buildings and like running on water. It was like crazy, not just like delusions, but like thoughts that went beyond like anyone's like rationality, and maybe other people who are bipolar 1 go manic and think that they can like fly and jump off buildings. I never thought that. I never thought that. Not even close. Like, I had some thoughts of grandeur and like spirituality. That's undeniable. There was a level of me which really thought that I had some like insight is what I would put it, the way I'd put it. But I never thought I could jump off buildings or run off of them or fly or run on water or like I never had like crazy I mean, people definitely get sexual urges when they're manic. I've heard that. My sexual urges weren't like weren't that crazy, but whatever it was,
It's like someone needed a snack in the middle of the night.
Whatever it was though, it was like someone told me like I was gonna go see like the Dark Knight like Rises or the Dark Knight, and like instead I like saw like the Lego Batman movie. Like, yeah,
that's a great description. No, that's a great description.
Like, it's like similar characters, but like it's just a completely different plot. Completely different.
I got you.
Yeah. So, and let's see, what time is it right now? Just because this is probably a good place to leave us off.
Yeah, right now it's 2:35.
Yeah. So right now, you know, I said all this stuff's going on. My dad comes out, and I'll close of this, and if or I'll give a quick.
You have more visits.
Yeah. Let's definitely chat again. Just to close, my dad comes out once things start getting kind of wonky, like a day later after he leaves. Comes on a Friday, stays till Sunday. Things are starting to get angry while he's there. Probably go from like a 3 to a 6 or 7, and he leaves on Sunday morning at like a 7. And then I just went up into a ball of flames, like Human Torch. So he has to come back on Monday. Like he coordinates with my friends. At this point, my friends are concerned.
Okay.
Now that whole weekend, that weekend starting on Friday or Saturday, they started to get to a point of like, intervention, like, or something. And so, but we need to help him because this is a health problem. Like, this is serious. So my dad comes back. My friends and him coordinate a way to kind of involuntarily like admit me to the actually, even before I was to be involuntarily admitted, that my parents and my psychiatrist who told me all this Looney Tunes crap, she tried to get me to get my blood drawn at the student health center, probably so that they could just start putting me on lithium instead of sending me to the hospital, or so that they could like try something. I don't really know. But
do you think she was trying to clean it up?
I don't know what she was trying to do, but it was never anything good. So,
every time your response is, why was she in this story?
Yeah. I mean, it was.
That's what it gives me. It's like you're reading the script, and you found the one character, and you're like, you know what this plot didn't need? This one character, just this one specific character. Yeah.
She was not. I don't want to go too hard on.
No, I got you.
But she did that, and then I was so manic I wasn't able to really like figure out how to go to the hospital or to the camp. Or I went to campus, and I was so manic and like confident. I like parked my car in front of the student health center, and there was like a camera to let you in, and because it was COVID. And instead of like giving my like temperature and like whatever, I think I just flicked the camera off and then left. It was something like wild like that. I was just like, oh my God, like I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So then my dad comes like that night or a day later. I don't remember exactly the timeline. A lot of crazy conversations go down in between. We can talk about this like this is the craziest week of my life. It was nuts. Every conversation was a movie, like in a bad way, but nonetheless, movies. Yeah. And so my dad came and took me to a hotel. The next morning I like woke up and we like went to the hospital and we went to the ER. And oh God, I have so many stories. This is the craziest.
Would you say a hospital is when reality set in, or there was still more that happened at the hospital?
It was a gradual process. Reality did not set in until probably a year ago. This was 2 years ago that we're talking about. So the year that follows this first initial moment is crazy. So it's like, dude, this is like Star Wars. We've got like 3 trilogies. We've got like
This is the warm up.
this was the first trilogy, you know. So, but to get into where the second trilogy kind of starts, my dad takes me to the hotel. We go to the hospital, and I'm kind of freaking out, sitting there in manic, like, what's going on? And then finally, they're like, all right, like, can I please get moving? And they take me to a back room. They give me scrubs, and they start to draw my blood. I think, I don't remember it this part well, but I think I tried to pull the needle out of my arm while they were drawing the blood. Yeah. I'm like freaking out.
That's a messy situation.
It was messy.
Yeah.
But I don't think I did that actually. But I was freaking out at them. They put me in these scrubs. I'm like, what the hell are you all doing? I thought that they were gonna like, I don't know what I thought they were gonna do, but I thought they were like testing my blood for like mutations and stuff. Like,
you had an X-ray moment.
Yeah, I had an X-ray moment. Yeah. And then they put me in this room where it was like 6 or like 8 armchairs where you can sit after you get your blood drawn to go into the psych ward.
Those chairs are so uncomfortable.
And they're so uncomfortable. And I didn't know it was a psych ward. I thought this was, again, like the Avengers Initiative or something, or Hollywood set. Like, I did not know. I was so far in La La Land. And I was like, do you guys have any food? And they were like, maybe, please get me food. I'm getting mad at them. They brought me like a tray of like a turkey sandwich.
Okay.
It wasn't bad, but it was.
The turkey wasn't dry.
It didn't look great though, and so
it's hospital food.
So my manic self took the tray, threw it at the wall, and pulled the fire alarm, and then they put me in a jail cell for like probably 8 or 9 hours. Like, it was pretty long. It was like a
definitely Hollywood.
No bigger than this.
Yeah.
All concrete. Just a flat match on the ground. I probably did like 600 push-ups. Like,
I could imagine. You got to burn your time somehow. Yeah.
And I'm just like pounding on the wall. I'm like, someone get me Domino's. Like, I want Domino's. Like, I was like, this is a great movie, but like Warner Brothers fucked it up, and like they're gonna sell it to Disney. Disney will handle this better than Warner Brothers. Like, I just kept going off, and so then. I'll end it here and we'll continue at some other point. But
of course,
submitted to the psych ward in the late evening. I don't remember. My mom says it was the late evening. I thought it was early evening of that Tuesday. And my life has never been the same since.